עוסק אם כן במלחינים הגדולים שכתבו עבור הבלט. צפייה מענה לכם.
Well, congratulations. You're going to have a duet.
Really?
It's only natural for humans to have rhythm. But where does our inherent foot tapping and finger snapping originate from?
If you look at the roots of dance and the roots of music, they're clearly based in an even more, in one shared root, human root, and that is the human heartbeat, and also the rhythms of nature, whether they're expressed through waves crashing against a shore, the passage of night and day, of the seasons. I mean, the world, as we know it, has its rhythms, and our own bodies have their rhythms. I think music and dance grow out of the body's rhythms largely.
Music is where I'm sure dance has really started. I would say that if we go back even to the most fundamental forms of dance, which may have been stomping around for no other reason than showing some kind of an emotional output from the way one felt inside, there was probably music that came in shortly after to augment the feelings.
Anybody will move to music naturally, whether it be slightly off the beat or not, or slightly tone deaf. Some rhythm, something makes people move.
For me, there's absolutely no question. The reason that I began dancing and the reason I danced and needed to continue to dance for so much of my life was because of the music.
Music is everything. It's all music and a little bit of really good choreography, and that makes it all.
It's always been the music that gave me the most extreme feelings of joy and épanouissement when I danced.
For me, music first, then movement.
Music tells you how to do the steps. it tells you who the characters are. It gives the whole atmosphere to what you're doing. So I would say it's everything.
Truly great music not only communicates passion, substance, intelligence, vitality, and imagery, but it also creates an innate, indescribable feeling that embraces our souls. Without captivating musical scores, just imagine how the great ballets would sound. Let's listen. But add a 70-piece orchestra, and you have two integral ingredients that create a spiritual oneness. There have been many prominent composers who have left behind volumes of memorable compositions, but the one man responsible for making ballet writing respectable for serious composers was Russian-born Pyotr Ilyich Tchaikovsky. On November 6, 1893, Tchaikovsky's brilliant career came to an early end with his passing. He left us a legacy of great works that were filled with emotion and tenderness. His critics often said that he was too emotional, but this has only helped fuel his continued popularity as all the world loves a hopeless romantic.
I don't think ballet companies would be here today without Tchaikovsky. Thank God for Tchaikovsky, because he really elevated ballet music to an art, which it really wasn't before. And I think these three scores that we have from him are just wonderful masterpieces in different ways.
I think Tchaikovsky, is beautiful. We curse it when we hear the Nutcracker. But, if you don't hear it for maybe for a year or two and you hear it again, you say, oh, what a beautiful music. Tchaikovsky was really tremendous.
Like in Tchaikovsky's score is all there. It's mystery. All that is there.
You hear Tchaikovsky and you're just taken away by his melodies and his lyricism and his, in a sense, theatrics. And you just think, wow.
The world has been blessed by some composers, namely the big Russians with Tchaikovsky and Stravinsky, say, of the 20th century. That these two composers really enjoyed the dance form so much that they wrote some of the most definitive works in all of the orchestral repertoire.
Igor Stravinsky is considered the 20th century's most influential composer. Born in Russia in 1882, he was still composing when Elvis was the king of rock and roll and bell-bottoms were the rage. Stravinsky, commenting on his composing, said, "I live neither in the past nor in the future. I am in the present. I cannot know what tomorrow will bring forth. I can only know what the truth is for me today. But even before Stravinsky, there were the immortal Germans, Beethoven, Mozart, Bach, Haydn, Wagner, Brahms, Schubert, and Handel, who were the sculptors of classical music, and one other. Frédéric Chopin broke this mold. Born in Poland, he moved to Paris in 1830 and was heralded as one of the most non-German of all great composers. Chopin's pure, beautiful, sweeping melodies helped shape the glory years of the Romantic movement. He was the quintessential pianist of the piano age, writing virtually nothing but piano music. No symphonies, no operas, no oratories, very little orchestral work, and no ballets. So what's he doing in a ballet show, you might ask? Well, some of his more famous piano pieces, like Chopiniana, Autumn Leaves, and Chopin Concerto, have been choreographed to by such ballet greats as Fokine, Pavlova, and Nijinsky. And other notable ballet composers like Stravinsky could not ignore Chopin's genius and incorporate his works into their own.
We were performing, I think it was somewhere in Minnesota or something, and we were dancing. We had two pianos, and who should be in the audience but Stravinsky was in the audience. And I sent a message to him apologizing because Stravinsky had actually done a wonderful orchestration of the Chopin music for Les Sylphides. And we were doing Les Sylphides with two pianos. Oh, this remark was incredible. I sent my publicity manager at the time, George, his name was, I sent him to apologize to Stravinsky, who was in the audience, that, you know, for the fact that we only were using two pianos. And his remark was devastating. He said, one would have been enough.
Romantic ballet reached its zenith with the premiere of Giselle in Paris in 1841. It remains a perennial favorite among dancers the world over. Its delightful and engaging score was penned by the popular French composer Adolphe Adam, who's best remembered today for composing the Christmas carol, O Holy Night.
It's fashionable for musicians to sneer at Adolphe Adam because the score for Giselle is not as sophisticated as the score for Tchaikovsky's Sleeping Beauty, for example. And that's perfectly true. But in fact, it's the perfect score for that ballet. It captures that fairy tale atmosphere wonderfully. It's strikingly characterized in terms of the way the ethereal world of the second act contrasts with the real world of the first act. The emotions are true. There are wonderful things about it. It just isn't very complicated music.
The thing about Giselle is actually that it broke a lot of new ground. I think, in terms of the construction of a ballet.
The Romantic period's last great ballet, Coppelia, appeared on the stage of the Paris Opera in 1870. This ballet pantomime was the first to introduce the balletic use of the Hungarian folk dance known as the Sárdás. Its infectious and enchanting score was written by the French composer Leo Delibes. A New York Times critic described this great composer as the psychologist of all the uglier emotions: hatred, contempt, rage, disgust, despair, mockery, and defiance. Born in Russia in 1891, Sergei Prokofiev was one of the leaders of Soviet proletarian music movement. He is best known to the general public for his enchanting symphonic fairy tale, Peter and the Wolf, and is best known in the ballet circles for composing the delightful scores for Cinderella and Romeo and Juliet. Webster's defines a pit as a hole or cavity in the ground, an abyss, hell. For an orchestra, a pit is a section below the floor in front of the stage where they perform. Imagine, if you will, a dimly lit depression where just about anything could happen.
You know, in German, it's Grabe, which is often it can be translated as grave.
There was a woman, I think maybe the third row back, and she had her hair up in a big kind of bird's nest, and the baton went flying up, and it stuck in her hair in the third row back, and I saw this happen, and I lost it. I couldn't deal with it anymore.
And the next thing I knew, there were all these ladies in black and, and music stands being cleared, and there we were down in the pit.
The orchestra were under the stage, and the conductor had a little hole in. He popped his head up to watch us. You remember?
I think it was the dagger. And I was in Romeo and Juliet, where it was knocked out in the sword fight, and it flew in, and it just stuck right in the floor, right beside a musician.
I remember one time I was very nervous about doing a performance, and my mentor and director and partner looked at me, and he walked off from the stage. He said, "I don't care." He said, "Evie, I don't care. You can do anything. You can call flatten your face. You can, miss your pirouettes. I don't care. Just dance." And he turned his back on me, and he walked off stage, and just before he got off stage, he stopped. And he turned around and looked at me and says, "No, there's one thing that you cannot do." He said, "If you fall into the pit, promise me you won't climb back out again."
Surely, words to live or die by.
Usually, the concept of the ballet conductor is someone having shoes thrown at them, or being told, "Madame does this," or "Madame does that."
Dancer doesn't listen to music, they just count. They don't listen what music's saying. Do you agree?
Of course, but not entirely. You see, once a dancer becomes familiar with a particular piece of music and has literally memorized every solitary beat, the dancer will instinctively move to it. The choreography becomes second nature. Each beat a cue for a certain movement. Counting should only be a tool a dancer uses to learn the music. Once the music is imprinted within the dancer, she must be confident enough to let go of the count, trust herself, and rely on her muscle memory.
There are musical dancers, there are unmusical dancers. Well, maybe that's true, but also there are dancers just approach the music differently. They hear it differently. And the way they attack the music is different. You know, there are some dancers who love to be absolutely bang on the note. And there are other dancers who just sit around the note, you know.
I've been always pretty passive and try to be as flexible as possible to work always with conductors because I love music. I studied piano for 5-6 years and see the essential importance of music for the arts, for everything in the arts. But there have been a couple of occasions that I could have hung one or two of them by all means. And it's not necessarily because they were not talented, the conductors, but they just had a bigger ego than their baton. And that creates a problem.
The best dancers very rarely repeat performances. They go with the music, but the music has to go with them. There's this interplay, which is why a really good conductor is worth money in the bank for any ballet company, and they're extremely difficult to get. You usually get meek, mild, docile hacks conducting, unfortunately.
I had arguments with certain conductors who were too slow, or too fast, or selfish, just thinking, and we had to yell that, I'm sorry, it's not only a concert, you're accompanying the ballet.
It never fails to amaze me that these two art forms can be in the same room together, let alone perform side by side.
The dancers want to use music more often, I think, than they want to serve music.
As far as I'm concerned, when a ballet performance is on, the music runs the evening. The dance does not run the music.
The bottom line is that it's music and dance. There's such a thin line between the two. And you want to work together. Conductor and dancer, both sides want to work together. In the end, they want the show to be a success. But can they? That's the question. And how many times do they really work together?
I know that I can tell immediately in a performance when the conductor is with me and understanding, and we don't have to have direct eye contact. It's a sense. You sense the bond between the music and yourself and the conductor.
Some great music has also come out because of some great balletic ideas. So it's been a really a good marriage, not without its problems in the practical of recreating all of these things. But the world is lucky because of both art forms being able to work together.
history of ballet music certainly does not end here. It will continually evolve with new voices struggling to be heard. And ballet itself will always be, in the words of Paul Valère, a grove whose lovely branches are forever tossing on the winds of music.
הייתי רוצה שהיא תלחש לי